We are on at 12:01 p.m. You may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for PACO's monthly general membership meeting. Today, we are very pleased to have with us John Tortora, who is Chief Legal Officer of the Columbus Blue Jackets. John, and I can tell from your bio there seems to be a genetic predisposition to hockey. It seems to me as though you have a lifelong deep love of this sport. John was named Senior Vice President and Chief Legal Officer of the Columbus Blue Jackets in July of 2021. He is a long-time NHL executive, having spent the past 27 years working in professional hockey. Prior to joining the Blue Jackets, he spent most of the prior decade with the San Jose Sharks. He joined the Sharks in 2011 as general counsel, was promoted to chief operating officer in 2013, and ultimately to co-president in 2017. He also served as an alternate governor of the club and was an honorary board member of the Sharks Foundation. During his tenure, the Sharks hosted the 2019 NHL All-Star Weekend and created the BMW Lounge with a live Shark Tank featured on the television show Tanked. I'm sure that was fascinating. And hosted a Stadium Series game before a sellout crowd at Levi's Stadium. Prior to joining the Sharks, Tortora spent 14 years in the NHL office in New York, concluding his tenure as Vice President of Media and Business Affairs. His responsibilities included advising and negotiating content agreements, launching the NHL network, and overseeing federal lobbying initiatives in both Ottawa and Washington. New Jersey native, graduated from Seton Hall University, where he earned both his bachelor's degree in accounting and his law degree. He and his wife, Deborah, are parents to 2 adult children, and he is a board member of Catholic Social Services of Columbus. Welcome, John, and thank you so much for being here with us today. And of course, we do extend our deepest condolences on the recent loss of Maddie and Johnny Gaudreau. I know that is a very tragic loss that has deeply affected everyone in the Blue Jackets organization, players, front office, everyone, and not to mention the fan base as well. So we do extend our condolences on that loss.
Angela, thank you very much. It's been a very difficult 2 or 3 weeks here in Columbus. Johnny was a fantastic player for us and a bright spot to our organization when he chose to come here from Calgary. We did not know his brother all that well, but their closeness was palpable during the last 3 weeks, particularly if you watch the funeral service. And his dad was a regular at our home games. We would regularly feature him on Bally's Sports TV during a game, commenting on his son's play, much like a parent would comment on his 10-year-old son's play on the ice. So things hadn't changed there. And very close-knit family, and they're going to be missed, and it's going to impact the franchise for a long time. Thank you for the kind words, though. And thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to speak with all of you. And I've noticed all the LinkedIn notification I've gotten from all the attendees coming. I'm like, all right, this might be a big crowd today, so I'm ready for you.
Good. I'm hoping that we will have lots of good questions for you. And I remember when Columbus was not a big hockey town. My first exposure to hockey personally was in the late 90s, when the only hockey game in town was the Columbus Chill. And I remember my boss gave me tickets to a game one night, and it was the first hockey game I'd ever gone to. And a fight broke out very early into the game, and I was appalled because everybody just stood back and crossed their arms and watched them fight. And I couldn't understand why they weren't breaking it up. And my husband at the time said, well, if they try, they're going to get hurt. So they just wait until they're on the ice. When they're down, then they can break it up.
Right.
And then, the Blue Jackets came to town, and I know that was so exciting for my family. And I kind of wondered, Columbus is not a hockey town. Will they sustain Yeah, will they build a good fan base? And I think they have done so, and it's been wonderful to see.
Yes, the franchise has done so, and the fans have responded over the last 25 years. So I was at the NHL office in New York when Columbus came into the league in 2000, and I remember when the league selected
I did.
Columbus, and it was somewhat of
I'm on a
a
call,
risk because not
so
many professional
I
sports
know.
teams had played in Columbus or called Columbus home. It was basically considered a college town with Ohio State. But it turned out to be a very smart risk that the league took. And it starts with ownership. Our owner, John McConnell, at the time wanted an expansion team here in Columbus. He wanted it as a gift to the city. He had grown up in the city and become a very successful businessman as a result of his work in the city, most notably Worthington Industries. But he wanted to give something back and buying an expansion team and placing it here in downtown Columbus was his way to give back to the city that gave him so much and to the people that gave him so much. And our goal is over the last 25 years is obviously to put a winning product on the ice, but beyond that, to create a destination for fans and families to come to escape the real world, to come have a good time at the arena for 2 or 3 hours, enjoy an experience with your family and with your friends. And I think we've succeeded in doing that. Our fan support through the years, even at times when the product on the ice was not all that good, has been outstanding, both from a fan standpoint and a corporate partnership standpoint. And the fans just keep coming, and we're very fortunate in that regard. And Columbus has responded and made this franchise a success the way the fan sport has gone. So I can go and tell a little bit about myself. Obviously, Angela touched upon most of it, but educated at Seton Hall Law School, graduated in 1994, which seemed like a long time ago. And but wanted to get into hockey. I had a passion for the sport. I grew up in northern New Jersey. The Devils moved from Colorado. They're a relocated franchise from Colorado to New Jersey in 1982. I was 13 at the time, and I took to the team. They were New Jersey's own, and I became a fan of the team. And as the 80s came into the 90s, the sports world was becoming more litigious. The dollars were getting bigger. You had labor unions formed, you had strikes, you had lockouts, you had significant free agency. And I took a liking to that side of the business. I was an accounting major at Seton Hall, wanted to get into law for the sole purpose of getting into sports. And Seton Hall had a sport law program, much like, as you know, law schools have law reviews, right? Environmental law, the law review, constitutional law. Well, Seton Hall had a sport law journal. And they had, when I was a senior at the undergrad, they had placed a third-year law student into Major League Baseball from the sports law program. And I was like, all right, there's my path. I didn't necessarily want to be a litigator or a lawyer per se. I just want to use the law degree as a means to an end. And I ended up writing onto the journal, editor in chief, and then I graduated in '94. No job in sports right away. Litigated for a few years, but landed a job at the National Hockey League in 1997, working on TV contracts. Every team locally has a TV contract. Ours is with Bally's Sports Network. The leagues are involved in those deals to some degree. We also did national deals in the US and Canada, in French, in Montreal. So I got a good taste of what the content industry looked like from a hockey perspective. And since I watch a lot of hockey, understanding the TV environment was right at home for me. As time went on, though, the industry changed. More and more teams were creating their own networks. You had league-owned networks like the NHL Network, and I found that my job over the course of 14 years was less about hockey and more about content. And you could have put my job basically at Disney or at a TV network of some sort or MTV. It would have been the same type of job. But I wanted to get back to the hockey. I liked the hockey. And an opportunity came with the Sharks to become general counsel in 2011. And we moved the family to San Jose, California from northern New Jersey. Our daughter was sixth grade going to seventh grade. So she had 1 foot on the plane when we left and 1 foot in the grave. And she didn't really talk to me for about 2 years after that, as you could imagine, moving an 11-year-old. And our son was quite different. He was going into fourth grade that summer. And when we told him we were moving to California, In April of that school year, he was in third grade at the time. He went into school the next day, packed everything up, and refused to do work for the next 2 months because he was moving. So he was fine. We got to California, and the difference between working for a team and a league is that a league, the big driver for me is that the league goes to the Stanley Cup final every year, but only a team can win the Stanley Cup. And I want to win the Stanley Cup. And the San Jose Sharks at the time were very good. And but the key difference between the two operations, that the league has to worry about all 32 NHL clubs and the dynamics and generating revenue for the clubs and the like. Whereas a team business is extremely local. It's selling tickets, it's dealing with local sponsors, it's trying to drive revenue locally. And in some respects, the league does not really have the ability to get that deep with a club into their local market. No one knows the San Jose market or the Columbus Blue Jackets market more than the people who work at the San Jose Sharks or the Columbus Blue Jackets. And that was a big difference from just a mindset. The other big difference was arenas, particularly, are part of a larger district. We see it here in Columbus, the Arena District, right? Partnership with Nationwide Realty and the like, and then flowing from Nationwide Arena, you see the Crew Stadium, you see Huntington Park and the like. So there's a lot of land use issues. And same thing in San Jose. We had a lot of land use issues. In both cases, Columbus and San Jose, the team does not own the arena. So they're owned by a public entity. The county here in San Jose, it was a city, and that creates a public-private dynamic that's very public. So land use, environmental issues are more on the forefront at the local level, at the team level, than they ever are at the National Hockey League level. The league doesn't run an arena. It has an office building, right? So that was kind of a learning curve there as I made the move. Quickly got promoted to a business role in San Jose, where I was overseeing the entire business operation of the franchise. And that was actually liberating, being a lawyer, moving into that role, because as a lawyer, you're kind of conservative and you're kind of more careful about what you say, and the whole legal dynamic of negotiating a deal or getting into litigation with somebody, whatever. When you're operating a club at a president or a chief operating officer level, you're more in a sales role. You're trying to sell corporate sponsorships, trying to support your sales team, and you can freewheel a bit more and try to sell in an effort to sell, and which was kind of liberating. It wasn't tied to the restrictions, if you will, of being a lawyer, if that makes sense. On the flip side, however, when I was interviewed, and I was interviewed frequently, I realized quickly that the interviews were not transcripts. And what showed up in the newspaper was not like a deposition where every word was taken. Writers had a liberty to change certain things. So there was a plus and minus as it moved into the different roles. But being an accounting major and a lawyer, the biggest difference moving into the business role is that I had to let go. I couldn't get caught in the details. I had to trust my staff more, particularly the legal department. And I had to operate at a much higher level and only get maybe surface level deep on issues and move on to the next issue. I neither had the time nor the bandwidth to get deep into things. And you had to learn how to trust your staff and develop a rapport with them and to let go. And that was somewhat difficult in the beginning. It got easier. I learned how to delegate very quickly and develop that skill very efficiently as time went on. But that was kind of a difficult transition at first. In terms of the Blue Jackets, I came here in 2021 after 10 great years in San Jose. Came here in 2021 in purely a legal capacity, and it was actually a relief in some respects, where you could see a non-legal issue transpire and realize, that's not my problem today, right? It's not a legal issue. Whereas in San Jose, almost everything was my issue. And the opportunities here have been fantastic. So things I deal with on a daily basis, sports betting. That was a big learning curve for me. We were in the middle of getting sports betting passed by the state of Ohio late in 2021, I think, launching a sports betting business with Fanatics as our partner. That was all new and a learning curve for me, and that took up a lot of time. I came in at the end of COVID, so dealing with employees coming back into the office, vaccinations, not vaccinations, people who didn't want to get vaccinated, a whole bunch of issues there. And of course, we had our own office policies. And then, of course, the players had the collective bargaining agreement, which is the labor agreement between the league and the players that had different but similar standards as well as related to COVID return. So all that was interesting to navigate. But Columbus has been a fantastic place to live and a fantastic place to work, kind of underrated from a place to live standpoint. Cost of living is lower, and I find traffic almost non-existent, although I'm sure all of you will complain about that, but try living in the Bay Area or New York. Housing prices here, just by comparison, and when we got here in 21, I think it was the height of the market, but even a home, let's say in Upper Arlington, would go for 4x of what it goes for here in the Bay Area. So we found the cost of living here far less than California, and it's been a wonderful experience. And people are just generally happier. Must be the Midwest happiness. Although I get, the whole time zone thing, being in the western part of the Eastern time zone, how much darker it gets here compared to New Jersey. That's still an adjustment for me. I mean, having fireworks at 10 o'clock is late. I'm open for questions. Feel free to interrupt. Otherwise, I will keep on going. All right, I'll keep on going.
Yeah, if you do find yourself with questions, either raise your hand, put it in the chat. I'll monitor that in case you're too shy. Feel free to turn on your camera and just jump in with a question, unmute yourself. We would love to entertain as many questions as we can, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Thank you. A day in the life, Patty.
Oh, hi. I'll turn my I don't know how to turn my camera on. There we go. Hi. I was just curious. You mentioned sports betting, and that's kind of new. How does that work with, I don't know, conflicts of interest? Like if you guys have a betting agency, I'm just curious how all that works.
Sure. There are a few layers to deal with there. You have league rules, for example. The leagues do not want teams operating a sports betting retail or mobile platform. All right, because there's where a conflict of interest could be. The league is very focused on protecting the integrity of the game. So if we're operating a sports betting place, well, then we could have an influence on the outcome of games based upon betting and everything else. So the league wants the teams to be one step removed from that. So in that regard, we partner with Fanatics, who is a sports betting operator, to operate under our sports betting license. So the league is concerned always about the integrity of the game. The league also doesn't want employees betting on hockey. So I cannot go into any sports book, Fanatics or otherwise, and bet on hockey. Because again, I'm an employee of the Blue Jackets. By the very nature of my role, I have inside information. I may not deal with the players directly. I may not decide who plays in games. I may not make contract decisions. But by the very nature of my role and anyone's role here inside the Blue Jackets, we have inside information. And so therefore the league doesn't want us affecting games in that way or being tempted to. So we're prohibited from betting. All right. So then you have this, that's the league. And then you have the state issue. The state's primary focus, twofold. One, it's a revenue opportunity for the state and it's a revenue opportunity for the teams. And sports betting is growing throughout the country, so join in the fray. But the state wanted to make sure that the consumer was protected, particularly the problem gambler. Make sure the person who had an issue with gambling was protected in advertising and the like. So that was the state's focus. And the state also didn't want employees betting on any sport. So we're precluded in some respects from even betting on football, if you will. So there were some dynamics there, and there's a lot of nuance. So you had the state, you had the league, and then you also had our relationship with Fanatics. What the state did in creating the structure for sports betting was, I thought, very brilliant, and the state has been extremely cooperative during this entire process. What the state did is they wanted the teams, the Blue Jackets, the Browns, the Crew, the Bengals, the Guardians, they wanted us to own the sports license, both a mobile license and a retail license. So we had to apply, go through an application process. We own the license. Recognizing that the leagues did not want the teams operating under the license, the state allowed us to partner with an operator, again, in our case, Fanatics, to operate under our license. So Fanatics then entered into what the industry calls a market access agreement, where we allow them access to the Ohio market to operate under our license. And of course, that deal contains guarantees and revenue splits and everything else. Under that rubric, to protect the integrity of the game, we are prohibited from collecting any revenue, the Blue Jackets, from collecting any revenue that Fanatics generates on hockey bets. So you go into the Fanatics retail store here at Nationwide in the Arena District. Yeah, you can bet on hockey. You can bet on the Blue Jackets game. Fanatics may or may not make money on that bet, but we cannot participate in that revenue split with Fanatics. We can participate in college football, baseball, but not hockey. So Fanatics comes in, they want access to the market because they're building the sports betting business. They need to operate somewhere. They need to partner with a team that has a license. We were that team for them. We struck a deal. They're in the marketplace. Now they're in business. They operate both under our retail license, the brick and mortar store here in the Arena District, and then also under a mobile license where you can, anywhere in Ohio, you can access the Fanatics app and bet. We also had to work with Fanatics. Of course, if we were to give them access to the market, we wanted them to do a separate sponsorship deal with us. So they are also a sponsor where they pay us dollars to sponsor their product inside the arena and during Blue Jackets games. So it ended up being a two-part relationship with Fanatics. The way we work with their advertising, we have to approve all their advertising. Any advertising they do under our license, we need to approve. And things that we need to be mindful of, and putting the state hat on for a minute, is to make sure we're not selling any advertising or targeting, is the term of art, targeting minors. So yes, we can promote the Fanatics Sportsbook, but we have to make sure that advertising isn't targeted specifically toward minors, right? That's one aspect. And number two, every piece of advertising must have a problem gambler message. If you are a problem gambler, call 1-800-whatever, right? And that's to protect the problem gambler. And this is no different than, I make it akin to the Surgeon General warning for smokers, right? Buying cigarettes, the Surgeon General warning is on there. It's the same thing. And in educating our activation team here that works for Fanatics on all this advertising, it's a non-starter. It's got to be there. And Fanatics obviously is in the business. They know that as well. So we're focused on protecting the integrity of the game, protecting the consumer and the minor, and then also trying ways to generate revenue. So why is sports betting important beyond those three areas? Another area is engagement. All right. This is another way to engage our fans. As the world has evolved, people may not be watching 3-hour football games anymore or 3-hour NFL football games anymore. They may be getting their content through highlights, through apps, through video games like EA Sports, and through sports betting. So we need to be in that place in a way to engage our fans in a different way. So there may be Blue Jackets fans that engage with our product by betting on our product, and that's fine. We need to be in that space, and that's another reason why we wanted to pursue sports betting.
Thank you. That was great. Very interesting.
In terms of a day in the life, again, any other questions, please interrupt. Teresa?
Hi, John. Thanks for coming today. My question is, when you are negotiating and working on these contracts, are you getting much pushback from Fanatics or anybody else about these parameters, or is it just accepted protocols? We're not going to target minors. We will always have a problem gambler message, that kind of thing. Is there pushback, or is that pretty much the standard across the board?
It's standard across the board. So any sports betting operator in the state of Ohio, and actually any state in the country. I mean, Ohio is not unique. If you go to do sports betting in New Jersey, there are similar parameters. They know the rules. They know the rules, so that we're not mandating it. It's mandated by the state, and we, both Fanatics and the Blue Jackets, must follow it. So it's a non-starter. And in fact, there was I have to remember my facts on this. I think when the tax rate for sports betting operators, when sports betting was passed in 21, was 10%. And I think in the first 6 months, another operator, not Fanatics, another operator was not following the rules in terms of targeting minors. And it annoyed the governor, so much so now the tax rate is 20%. So the state is watching, and they're very focused on the consumer, and it's just a non-starter. So we're not going to get pushback from Fanatics on that. And where we get, and actually the negotiation with Fanatics was not all that difficult because we had a meeting of the minds. They wanted to be here, and we wanted it, right? So it's just a matter of negotiating terms.
Great, thank you.
So in terms of a day in the life, I think it might be helpful to start as to how a professional sports team operates. Our biggest, from a P&L standpoint, our biggest expense by far is player salaries. Player salaries, the NHL cap is like over $80 million. Most teams spend to the cap, all right? That's the amount we can spend in total on player salaries. But there are so many things beyond that. You have to pay for your head coaches, your scouts who travel all over the world looking for the next hockey player, your general manager. How about traveling a team on a VIP configured plane, right? And all these hotel stops for 41 home games. How about feeding them on the plane from a nutrition standpoint? How about the costs associated with insurance on all this stuff, right? The staff here at the Blue Jackets, we have over 200 employees, right? There's a cost to doing business. So, but by far your biggest expense is your player salary. That is your product, if you will. That's what your research and developing your product that you're selling. So how do you recoup that expense? How do you generate revenue? And there are about 4 or 5 key tenets where teams generate revenue. The obvious one is ticket sales, all right? And still in the NHL for a team, that's the biggest single driver of revenue is ticket sales. You want your building full, you want people coming to the games, you want season ticket holders, you want partial plan holders, you want to create premium experiences, suites, loge boxes, terrace tables, our new all-inclusive club that we're launching later this month. You want to create premium experience so people can come and experience the game. You want them in the building. And from the time when I started the league in 1997, so here we are now in 2024, the demands of the customer have changed, all right? In some respects, due to the cell phone. When I started in 97, wins and losses were the most important thing. Fans wanted to come, see the team win, and go home, sit there, have a beer, a soda, hot dog, whatever. As time has gone on, winning is still critically important, but other things have become just as important. The social media experience of taking a picture with your friend at the game, the meeting a player pregame, doing something on the ice, shooting a puck postgame, having a hospitality area where you can bring all the paralegals for a holiday party up in the terrace green that we have here. All those social media hospitality experience have changed the sports industry. And what we have discovered over time, not just the Blue Jackets, but the industry, is that the consumer, you, are willing to pay more money for the better experience than just coming to a hockey game on a Tuesday night. And we have seen through things like dynamic pricing and variable pricing, where we charge different prices for different seat locations, different opponent, different days, much like a hotel does, much like an airline does. We see that more fans are willing to come and pay more for us to see a lesser opponent on a Saturday night, because that night's more convenient to them than going to see the Stanley Cup champions on a Tuesday night, right? So hockey is still the focus, wins are still the focus, but the customer experience has risen higher on that pie chart, if you will. And that's what we've had to respond to as an industry. Provide the experience for you so you keep coming back, where the win and loss could be almost secondary to some respects. And I think we have done a pretty good job of that. But where you generate the revenue is selling those tickets, selling those hospitality spaces, selling those premium spaces. That's one area. The second area is corporate partnership sales. Anything you see in the arena from an advertising standpoint is pursuant to a deal that our corporate partnership team has sold and that we, the legal department, has papered. So we do a lot of corporate partnership deals. We have over 125 corporate partners. And the idea of a corporate partnership is a multi-year arrangement where the partner pays a significant sum of money, let's assume six figures, low six figures, and they get a bunch of assets in the arena that we sell to them. It could be a dashboard advertising. It could be advertising in the ice. It could be a suite. It could be product placement. It could be experiences, a whole bunch of things. But the idea here is to find out and understand what the needs of the partner is and how we at the Blue Jackets can provide a platform for that partner to show off their product, right? So the most obvious one is Lexus is a sponsor, for example, right? On the ice intermission, here's the Lexus car. You know, if you shoot the puck into the net, you win the car at the end of the year. Like, that's an obvious product placement one. But there are hundreds of those, things big and small, that go on all the time. If you're at a Blue Jackets game, we have the blimp going around during the intermissions, right? They're dropping things to fans. Well, that's a sponsor activation. Jets Pizza is paying for that, or somebody else is paying for that. So that whole dynamic takes a lot of execution, and it's all pursuant to sponsorship deals. And we don't want deals to be 1 year. We want them to be multi-year, because if you're a new sponsor coming in and spending a certain number of dollars, it's going to take a year for you to figure out what is working, what doesn't. We're tracking this too from a business intelligence standpoint. We're tracking to see how our fans are activating with your product, what the uptake is on a reward program, for example. And the sponsor's tracking that as well. And we meet with them halfway through each year. How is it going? Where can we improve the activations next year? So if you have a 1 year deal, you can't develop that partnership. We want to be improving the partner's business through their relationship with us. We simply don't want to check. We want them to activate, bring their partnership to life, and generate new customers for their business, right? So you need 2 to 3 years to fully assess that. And if that goes well, hopefully they're renewing for more years and more dollars with better experiences, right? So that's how the partnership aspect works. But all those deals need to get papered, and they're nuanced to some degree because you're selling, you know, what partnership teams sell is exclusivity. They sell different types of exclusivity in different categories. So a bank, for example, wants exclusivity in that category so that you don't go to a competitor bank and sell a sponsorship. And of course, exclusivity has multiple layers of nuance and everything else associated with it. So it can get a little more complicated than it sounds, and you're dealing with significant dollars. Every loge box that you see at the arena, those are the boxes about halfway up the arena on the one side. They're all under contract. We have to do those contracts. Any suite is under contract. Any terrace table is under contract. These are multi-year commitments, 2, 3, 4 years, sometimes north of six figures. So there's where we get some revenue. We also get revenue from our television relationship with Valley Sports Network. They pay us under a multi-year deal. They're going through some bankruptcy troubles right now, which is going to create an issue for our business across the entire industry. There's revenue there. Our radio agreement, there's revenue there. So those are the things that we do to support revenue generation. And of course, like any other legal department, we deal with HR issues to some degree. We deal with marketing contracts. We deal with, in our case, with our players, we deal with immigration. The Columbus Blue Jackets have 50 players under contract. About half play on the NHL team and half play in Cleveland at our minor league team. All those players are under contract, but maybe a third of them are Americans. So the rest are from other parts of the world, most notably Canada. I think when I started here in 2021, that year, I think we had players from 10 different countries playing on our team. Sweden, Finland, Switzerland, Latvia, Russia, you name it, they played here. And every time a player comes in from another team, he's changing his employer, and that requires immigration. We acquired Sean Monahan over the summer as a free agent. He signed with us from Winnipeg. His entire career, he's a Canadian, his entire career played with Calgary, Montreal, and Winnipeg. This is his first time playing for a team in the U.S. We got to get immigration done for him. So that takes up a lot more time than you realize. And any type of player movement requires an immigration if the player is not an American. And of course, things like a few years ago, well, it's still ongoing now, but Russian players and what was going on with the Ukraine, and then we had a game in Finland. If you're a big Blue Jackets fan, we played 2 games in Finland 2 years ago. Well, now you have to get all these non-Americans into Finland as well to play a game. So there's a lot of legwork there from an immigration standpoint. That's basically the gist of our day from the day-to-day standpoint. We are not involved, other than immigration, we are not involved with the hockey operation. The collective bargaining agreement between the league and the players is a robust document, over 700 pages. The players' contract, the SPC, the standard players' contract, is a boilerplate contract for the most part. And where the skill comes in is negotiating those contracts, the term, the dollars, the bonuses, the no trade clauses, and making it work under a cap system. All right. So there's not much legal work in terms of the contract. The boilerplate was already negotiated at the league NHLPA level when the CBA was done. So you don't need much legal help there. You just need someone who understands the cap, understands the dollars, and how to build a roster that can win. And so we're not really directly involved with the hockey team in terms of day-to-day player contracts.
Okay. Well, speaking of the players, and maybe this personal opinion, and maybe you don't want to give away any answers to this, but the prospects teams or games have been going on up in Boston, and you had some pretty successful games. What's your take on what the prospects are for this year?
Oh, our prospects are very good, very strong, and now a majority of those players who played in those prospect games this weekend are not going to see the NHL roster this year, more likely than not. They're more maybe 2 to 3 years away, recent draft picks, perhaps still going back to junior hockey or playing in Cleveland. You may get 1 or 2 who play on the NHL roster this year. But when we made the aggressive move in 2019 to acquire players at the trade deadline to make the push for the playoffs, and that's when we beat Tampa in the first round and advanced to the second round. We also knew, that we're mortgaging our future in some regard to make the playoffs that year. So as 2 or 3 years later in 21-22, we knew we had to replenish that cupboard a little bit. And we traded some of our veterans like Cam Atkinson, for example, Seth Jones is another one, to try to get prospects and more draft picks into the system. And what you're seeing now is a byproduct of those moves. These players are maturing. These players, we have a very strong prospect pool, both at the NHL level and at the amateur level. And these players are going to start funneling into the system. You're going to see a lot of young players playing for us.
Okay, and we have another question from Kim Bowder. She asks, does immigration expedite sports teams' applications, or are you just in line like everybody else and it takes forever?
It's twofold. We are like everybody else, but the immigration office does have an expedited process at a cost. And if necessary, we take advantage of that. I don't think sports teams are favored at all. I think we take available of the expedited processes that the immigration office makes available to everyone. The difference is we may have the ability to incur those costs more than an average person does. And we try not to use that regularly. I mean, if you're acquiring a player in July, there is no need to do an expedited process. You have until September until he has to be here. The other piece, though, is when you acquire a player at the trade deadline in March and you have a game the next night, well, if you wonder why the player's not in uniform, it's even under the expedited system. that the immigration is not approved yet.
Great. Thinking about you had mentioned the social media aspect, from the consumer coming to the games. Yeah, I see a lot of times interaction on social media between different sports teams and different sports. The Blue Jackets are saying something about the Crew game. Crew players are coming to a Blue Jackets game for some kind of interaction. Um, so I see that a lot, and I love to see that. And I remember something. It was a few years ago. It was in the playoffs, and I don't recall what team. It was a Canadian team, I think, and they whined on social media about, it's time for our playoff game, but the Blue Jackets and so are still on the ice, and somebody else came back with, you've got permission to stay up past your bedtime tonight. Don't worry about it. And encouraging things, wishing the Reds good luck on their first game. So I see a lot of interplay between Ohio professional teams in that manner. Is there a lot of interaction between the different professional teams in Ohio or elsewhere, on a day-to-day basis, or is it just social media, or does it go a little bit deeper than that?
Somewhere in between, probably a little bit deeper than just social media. We are friendly with all the clubs in Ohio. We tap into them regularly on different issues to compare notes. Sports betting was a perfect example. We formed a collective. The sports teams in Ohio formed a collective to lobby, and we hired lobbyists to lobby the state to get sports betting passed. It made no sense having 10 different teams, if you will, lobbying the state house. We formed the collective, hired a lobbyist, and they handled the state house on behalf of all of us. So there was a lot of cooperation and collaboration on that. So that's probably an example at a very, very high level and in-depth level. On a day-to-day basis, as needed, yeah, I can call the general counsel at the Browns or at the Crew, and compare notes on a different issue, that sort of thing. So that does happen as well. On the social media piece, what's interesting is I think fans think that we are all rivals. Like Ohio State's a rivalry. The Browns are a rivalry. The Bengals are a rivalry. The Reds are, and the answer is no. I think if people are feeling good about Ohio sports, it helps everybody. So a few years ago when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl, yeah, we're going to support the Bengals. If the Browns go to Super Bowl, yeah, we're going to support the Browns. I think when the Bengals went, we had our players, I think they were playing in Montreal that day, come off the bus in all Bengals jerseys. I won't tell you the story of trying to get the Bengals jerseys in 2 days' notice to Montreal. That's a story for another time. But yeah, we're going to support them because our fans are Bengals fans. Our fans are Browns fans, and they're feeling good because the Bengals are in the Super Bowl. So we're going to ride that, and vice versa. So this notion of, hey, if the Crew do well and if Ohio State does well, it's bad for Blue Jackets business. No, I don't buy that at all. We're all in this together, and everyone's feeling good about sports. Everyone's going to spend on sports. And I think it's part, it's being a good community neighbor, but also it just makes sense.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? I mean, I've got a couple more I can share, but I don't want to dominate. Christy says, approximately how many paralegals? That's one of my questions, Christy. How many paralegals are employed by the Blue Jackets?
So we have zero, actually.
Zero.
So we are a very tight operation. I shouldn't say it like that. We are a very streamlined operation in that regard. We have Peter Lovins, who's been an attorney here for 12 years, and myself. And we do hire a legal fellow, usually a recent graduate from OSU, from their School of Law, who serves kind of on a 2-year role, right? We don't have enough work for 3 mature attorneys, but we're more than happy to take someone, a recent graduate, work with her for 1 or 2 years, him or her. They can leave at any time during the 2 years to find another job, but we give them a nice experience, kind of like a glorified clerkship, if you will. And that's really all our needs. We were looking for a paralegal about a year and a half ago, rather than doing the legal fellow route. But none of it, we had problems finding an available paralegal at the right price. So the paralegal market there wasn't really a supply demand match there. So we opted back to the legal fellow, but we don't have
Okay.
any paralegals.
Well, if you do one day find yourself in need of a paralegal, please reach out. We've got a job board that we would love to post your posting on. And I'm sure many of us on the call today would even be interested in the position.
There you go.
Next question.
And we don't have any EAs either. So me and Peter, we just kind of do it ourselves. This is how the world has changed since I started.
Okay. Okay. Another question, what unique legal issues are there to host the Blue Jackets games outside at OSU this year? Are you talking about the Frozen game?
Yep. So
Okay.
it's not very few legal issues. It's just a really unique business setup. And the league has started these outdoor games. They did the first one in, I think, 2008, and they've been a wild success. Great for the market, and the league has the whole ice configuration down. Like, they work. It's almost on automatic to some degree how well they work. But it's a unique business setup in this regard. As a franchise, one of our property rights, if you will, granted to us by the league, how's this for a legal discussion, is we have the right to play 41 home games and to generate revenue from those home games. All right. So that's our right as a member of the league to sell tickets, keep that revenue, and play home games. These outdoor games are a league event. All right. So effectively, what happens is the league wants to control the event. So what the league does is they basically take one of our home games and effectively buys us out of the home game. So now we're made whole dollar-wise. And of course, they look back at past home games and days of the week and all that stuff, right? And so we cede the game to the league. We're made whole dollar-wise. And then the league takes on all the risk. And the league, in this case, partners with OSU to rent out the stadium for the game. And the league comes in and brings in the ice. Now, in terms of selling tickets, league responsibility, club responsibility, and basically our responsibilities would be akin to how many seats are in Nationwide Arena, right? And then the visiting team has a responsibility as well. And my experience with these games, particularly when we're in San Jose, they sell very quickly, right? And we're looking forward to an outstanding experience. So it's not really a legal issue. I mean, there's contracts involved. OSU has a contract with the league. We have a contract with the league in terms of buying out our game. There are sponsorship issues in the sense that it's now a league event. So league sponsors are going to come into the event, and their dashboard advertising, all the advertising at the game will be league sponsors, right? Not our sponsors. And I'm simplifying this. Not our sponsors. And of course, our sponsors who are used to sponsoring Blue Jackets games, right, may not like the fact that there's a competitor at this home game, because it's still our home game, that the league it has granted the rights to. But we build that into contracts. So like our sponsorship contracts in these regard, we have carve-outs, what we call for league preemptions. So if there is an outdoor game, sponsor X is not going to be, we're not violating any contracts there, and they'll be aware of it. But it's just the way the league works. So that's all been worked out through years of doing this by the league.
Okay.
Same thing with the All-Star game. If we host the All-Star game like we did in 2015, it's a league event. So it's their sponsors, even though it's in the Blue Jackets arena.
Okay. But I'm assuming that just from the use of the stadium and everything, the arena, that the Blue Jackets don't go away empty-handed from that.
No, I mean so we're made whole dollar-wise in terms of losing the home game, but also the halo effect. The NHL commissioner Gary Bettman says this all the time about outdoor games. There's a halo effect that people leading into the week or two leading into the game and a week or two out of the game, it doesn't matter wins or losses, where you are in the standings, people are talking hockey. People are buying Blue Jackets merchandise. They're buying tickets. They might be buying a ticket package for next year. Our game's in March. So there's a halo effect, and it's our responsibility as a team to try to leverage and maximize that halo effect to generate more revenue. So while it's the ancillary stuff where the benefit could be in there for the team.
Yeah, not to mention the restaurants and shops and hotels around the arena district that are going to benefit handsomely from such an event.
Well, just anything we do here, right? You know, the concerts, we don't book the concerts. Ohio State manages Nationwide Arena. They book the concerts, but the economic impact of a hockey team, concerts, and everything else on this area is exponentially large, and that's why the arena has been so successful. We're jobs too, right? Not only the 200 full-time employees that we have, but all the part-time workers who help with the concessions, who help with ticket taking, whatever it is. There's anywhere from 500 to 1,000 part-time workers on any given night here. So we create jobs. The economic impact from people coming in, going to restaurants in the arena district. If you're coming in from out of town for a Justin Timberlake concert, he's here next month. You know, that's a 1 or 2 nights in a hotel. Like that's immeasurable. And it all started 25 years ago and has been improved upon with the Crew and the Clippers. But yeah, and then you bring in an outdoor game. You have people coming from all over the Midwest. I have relatives from New Jersey who want to come out for the game, right? So they're spending 3, 4, 5 days. They might be going to another game, right? So that's all the halo effect for the Blue Jackets, but also for the entire city and county.
Right. Now, this question, you mentioned about the concession employees. When my son was a senior in high school, in order to pay for him to play hockey that year, I signed up for extensive days where I worked in the concession stands. So you have agreements with different nonprofit organizations to come in and staff different concession stands. And I imagine there's a contract involved with, you know, how much will your association make from, how will you benefit financially from bringing your people in and working our booth. And that kind of goes along with Laura's comment. She says, I appreciate the participation and support of Columbus Blue Jackets and coaches that they have with the CCYHA Blue Jackets Special Hockey Game program. Her son's been involved for 4 years now. And even extending beyond that, I know with Columbus Parks and Recreation, that is how my boys got involved playing hockey, and the Blue Jackets had extensive participation and support with that. And we really do appreciate that. That's one of the big great benefits to the community, I think.
Thank you. Thank you. Our ownership's mission from the beginning was to get sticks in kids' hands to play hockey. So we've been very aggressive at the grassroots level, creating hockey programs. And now you see players like Sean Corrali on our team who came up through the Columbus youth hockey system when he was younger. So it's a big byproduct of that, and a big part of what we do is these chiller rinks throughout the Columbus area are tied to growing the game of hockey, and we want a fan from cradle to death, right? Cradle to grave, we say. So and hockey is difficult because there's cost barriers to play hockey. It's not like basketball or football. Ice is expensive, the equipment's expensive. So, but the more we can get kids feeling and touching the game, the more likely they'll be a longtime fan. So I appreciate that recognition. In terms of volunteering, Delaware North is our food concessionaire here. And because the number of part-time workers we need, sometimes they're short. So they create this volunteer program where you do your volunteer hours, if you will, doing a concession stand on a given night, and some dollars or some arrangement they make with your nonprofit to raise funds for your school or youth hockey or Girl Scouts, wherever. That's where that comes in. We have the same program in San Jose as well. Sometimes you just can't get enough employees, and you can't be short. If you were short, then your whole guest experience suffers, right? And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. People don't want to wait in line. They want to be served well, all that other stuff. So there's a domino effect to it.
Oh, definitely. Lori commented that you have some dedicated fans, for sure. And she mentioned that they had a generator repairman that stopped by their house on the way to in Chillicothe, on his way to a Blue Jackets game one time.
There you go, from Kentucky. Yeah, yeah. There you go. So the reach of the team is quite far, and that's what we want to do, create experiences. He's going to have a fun time coming from Kentucky and recognize that our people do come a far way to games, and the cost of a hockey ticket, hey, it's discretionary income, right? You don't need to go to a hockey game, right? And the price is high, and we train our staffs here to recognize that people are making a decision to spend discretionary income and their emotion. Rooting for a sports team is purely emotional, to invest with us, and we need to provide that high level of guest service. Otherwise, they may not come back. Have they ever let me ride the Zamboni as a perk? I've ridden a Zamboni. One time, I was able to get my mom on the Zamboni when she
Oh,
was visiting.
goodness.
Yeah, yeah. We were all scared on that one. She was pretty giddy. I think Garth has a question here. Do you work with agents like Brett Adams on recruiting contracts? Is this recruiting player contracts? The answer is no. I don't do anything in terms of, oh, there you are. I don't do anything in terms of the player contracts, in terms of recruiting players. We have a scouting department, both a pro scouting department and an amateur scouting department that try to funnel players into our system and get them under contract.
That's probably a different department.
Yeah, it's under our hockey operations. And, we have about 15 to 20 scouts that travel the world. We have maybe a handful of pro scouts that follow players at the professional level, NHL and minor league level, guys who have already been drafted and already under contracts with other clubs. So if a trade opportunity comes up, we know what the depth roster is for the LA Kings, for example, and understand their contracts, how the guy's playing. So that's robust. Then we have the amateur scouts, which are about 10 to 12, that really travel the world to look at amateur players. And sometimes we'll start tracking a player when he's 15 years old. And so we know him inside and out before we even draft him, or we choose not to draft him, right? So, but that's a network of trying to get, that's your R&D, your research and development, if you will.
Well, that's another expense too.
It's another expense because these guys, these scouts are traveling, right? Now, most of them travel by car, but still, they go to anywhere from 150 to 200 games a year in remote locations in the U.S. colleges, for example, like Bowling Green, right? Bowling Green, and they'll go to Michigan the next night, then they'll go to Penn State, and then they'll go to BC, right? And the same thing in Canada with all the junior cities, Moose Jaw, Regina, all these places are traveling by car. And it's somewhat dangerous in the winter too. But they love it with their bad coffee at the rinks.
Yeah. A question. Besides Canada, what area of the world is most prolific for hockey players?
The U.S. is second. Sweden is probably third. Finland, Russia, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Germany a little bit more. Switzerland a little bit more. Latvia. Those are your hockey playing countries. So you look at your Olympic sports. You look at the Olympics. The teams are prominent in the Olympics for hockey. Your big six: U.S., Canada, Finland, Sweden, Russia, Czech. That's really, yeah.
Okay.
It's becoming more and more of a worldwide sport, and which is good, and makes the game even more competitive. And that's why we have 32 clubs. Can you feel the talent level for all these teams? The answer is yes, because the base of players is growing.
Great. Well, John, we are at 1 o'clock, so we'll wrap up. We thank you so much for being here and sharing your hockey knowledge with us. This has been a fascinating discussion. I've really enjoyed it, and I know we all have. We thank you for your time and your expertise, and we will be getting in touch. Yeah, I know you mentioned perhaps a paralegals event, and that's been on our wish list for several years now. We've done similar excursion with the Clippers and with the Columbus Crew. And we would love to get into the Nationwide Arena and do a Blue Jackets excursion as well. So we'll be reaching out for information on how to go about doing that.
I guarantee you, we will find a package that works for you.
Okay.
The right cost. How about that?
Okay, great. That sounds fantastic. And of course, we'll reach out to our sponsors and we'll see who wants to sponsor the event, and it'll be great.
Thank you for
But-
having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And thank you everyone for attending today. Make sure that you register for upcoming events. On Thursday, we do have Attorney John Goodman, who will be speaking to the Workers' Comp Roundtable, giving us a case law update. Next Thursday, I don't recall the woman's name. Somebody will be joining us from Veritext, I believe it is, on how to work with them. So check the calendar, check the website, check the weekly email, news email. Lots coming up in the next few weeks, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much.